of digestion throughout the GIT tract, والpancreatic secretions and control, possible ways of absorption throughout the gut wall, and the sites of absorption of different nutrients. Also, there is a carrier system. We call it the carrier-mediated transport of nutrients and the solute carrier transporters. Glucose absorption, glucose and galactose malabsorption syndrome, amino acid absorption and malabsorption of amino acids. And there is also the lipid digestion and absorptions and malabsorption of fatty acids. صوتي واضح؟
واضح.
واضح.
طيب ما في تقطيع في الصوت، ما في شيء، الانترنت جيد؟
لا كله تمام.
طيب معلش تأخير، بس اضطريت أبدل الحساب الشخصي لحساب الجامعة عشان أقدر أشير على الشاشة لا تأخرني. طيب in the mouth we talked last time about إيش الماstication، تمام؟ وبالتالي people thought previously that in the mouth there is no digestion taking place. However, في عندنا two enzymes that are there and they offer the initial breakdown of nutrients. The alpha amylase in the mouth breaks down starch into disaccharides. Optimal action at 6.7 pH. The lingual lipase breaks down, or begins at least, the breaking down of triglycerides. تنزل اللقمة إلى المعدة. And then the digestion in the stomach starts. Proteins interact مع active pepsin, which is activated by hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid activates pepsinogen and creates pepsin, which binds to proteins, creating peptones, smaller chains. Carbohydrates are also digested in the stomach, زي المouth. عندنا amylase in the fundus of the stomach. Fats, gastric lipase, gives it fatty acid and glycerol. In the small intestine, the digestive enzymes present in sloughed cells. Sloughed cells هي الخلايا اللي تتقشر من جدار الأمعاء، ويوجد داخلها enzymes تخرج من الفيسيكلز اللي فيها المالتيز للمالت اللي هو الشعير. splits maltose into two glucose molecules. Sucrase splits sucrose into glucose and fructose. And lactase splits lactose to glucose and galactose. Peptidases split small peptides into amino acids. And lipases split neutral fats to glycerol and fatty acids. Enterokinase activate trypsinogen into trypsin. The pancreas has two parts. Part منه نسميه endocrine pancreas, and the other part is called the exocrine pancreas. Exocrine because it has a duct, exo. So all of the secretions are excreted outside of it through a duct, a system that connects every acini, جمعها acini، والacinar cells مجمعها حول بعض كذا بشكل ايش acini. هذه acinas، والacinas تفتح على دكت صغيرة، والacini تتجمع الدكتات في الأخير وتطلع لك الدكت الأكبر والأكبر. بينما عندنا الاندوكراين بانكرياس اللي فيها لانجرهارز سيلز. البانكرياتيك secretions في الاندوكراين secretion islets of Langerhans عندنا الالفا سيل في الجلوكاجون والبيتا سيلز for insulin. والاكسوكراين secretion الاسيناين ducts الاسيناين secretes enzymes والduct secretes watery bicarb. الduct system take pancreatic duct تتحد مع الcommon bile duct they both open in the duodenum by the ampulla of Vater ومقفل عليها السفنكتر of OD. The bicarb secretion by the cells of the pancreatic duct is interesting mechanism. There is some kind of exchange that takes place. The lumen of pancreas or intestine, the bicarb is secreted in exchange to chloride, which keeps leaking outside of the cell. However, sodium مع الكلورايد are always friends, sodium chloride. The sodium leaks مع الwater in between the cells. However, we maintain sodium's concentration outside the cell to be high by the sodium potassium pump, a regular ATPase. Okay, so this maintains in the sodium برا أعلى. Okay, however, like any other cell, the pancreatic cell has carbon dioxide goes inside it. Okay, but there's a specific enzyme inside it called the carbonic anhydrase. It takes the carbon dioxide, binds it to water, creating a weak acid, proton, and bicarb. The bicarb is then secreted to outside. However, هذا البروتون عندنا exchanged proton pump. It exchanges sodium لهذا البروتون. والصوديوم يبغى يدخل داخل الخلية. ليش؟ لأن concentration حقه always kept weak because of the ATPase. فتشوف أنت كل العملية هذه عبارة عن تبادلات هدف منها إبقاء الصوديوم weak داخل الخلية علشان نستطيع أننا exchange things. So apical membrane contains the chloride bicarb exchanger. The basolateral membrane contains sodium potassium ATPase and the sodium hydrogen exchanger. The carbonic anhydrase enzyme creates this weak acid, bicarb. Bicarb is secreted by the chloride bicarb exchanger. And the proton is transported into the blood by the sodium proton exchanger. Absorption of hydrogen ions or protons causes acidification of the pancreatic venous blood. إيش يعني ذا الكلام؟ يعني الآن الأسينر fluid اللي يطلع من الexcretions is very alkaline. Bicarb is alkaline قاعدي. However احنا لما بنشفط هذا البروتون اللي هو الحمض نطلعه على الدم فالدم اللي بيمتص من البنكرياس في الفينز is very acidic. فكأنه جاي مد من البنكرياس حامضي. neutralize الالكالاين تايد leaving the stomach لأن الستومك بتفرز حمض فبيخرج منها الدم اللي يمتص يعني الدم اللي يخرج من المعدة من الفين يكون الكالاين. كلاهما في السبلانكينج نيرفز فيسلز يتحدا وبالتالي يعادلوا بعض الاسيديك تايد اللي جاي من البنكرياس والالكالاين تايد اللي جاي من الستومك. Okay, regulation of the pancreatic secretions. Nervous regulation. During the cephalic phase of digestion, vagal stimulation of acinar secretion is enzymatic. خلاص؟ الهرمونal regulation It is the primary regulatory mechanism. عندنا هرمون اسمه السكرتين released in response to the entry of acid into the duodenum, stimulates the duct cells to secrete copious quantities of alkaline fluid containing bicarb, which effectively neutralizes the acid. ثم عندنا كوليسيستوكاينين. الكوليسيستوكاينين CCK من اسمه كوليسيستوكاينين يعني الحويصلة المرارية. الكاينين حق الحويصلة المرارية. It is produced in response to the arrival of fat and protein products in the duodenum. It stimulates the pancreatic acinar cells to increase enzyme secretion. So, just to recap, عندنا a neuronal vagal stimulation releases enzymes into acini, while the acid from the stomach releases secretin from the wall of duodenum. Fats and amino acids cause the release of cholecystokinin. Secretin and cholecystokinin absorbed into the bloodstream ويرجعوا مرة ثانية circulating. Secretin causes copious يعني غزير ووفير secretion of pancreatic fluid, and bicarb cholecystokinin causes secretions of enzymes. طب what are the pancreatic enzymes؟ أول شيء عندنا الألفا أميليز. أميليز شفنا إنه يفرز في الفم، شفنا أيضا يفرز في المعدة، ومرة أخرى في البنكرياس. digest starch, cooked and uncooked starch. تريبسينوجين زي البيبسينوجين، كايموتريبسينوجين أو بروكاربوكسي بيبتايديز and proteolases. كل هذه digest protein. بس طبعا تريبسينوجين وكايموتريبسينوجين يتحولوا إلى تريبسين وكايموتريبسين. pancreatic lipase, phospholipase A, they digest triglycerides and phospholipids. Ribonucleases and deoxyribonucleases, they both digest nucleic acids. The enterokinases activate trypsinogen into trypsin, which activates other enzymes and activates itself حتى auto activation نسميها. طيب triglycerides digested by pancreatic lipase والcolipase into monoglycerides اللي يكون فيها glycerol مع one chain of fatty acid وفري fatty acids. Free fatty acids, they go and they bind together into big globules, we call them micelles. المicelles فيها fatty acids, monoglycerides, LPL, cholesterol, الفيتامينز A, D, E, K. هذه الفيتامينز اللي نسميها الفات soluble vitamins. هذه الفيتامينز تعتمد اعتماد كبير على وجود الدهون في أكلك حتى تستطيع أنك تمتصها من الأمعاء. They all together form together and fuse into the micelles. And by the conjugated bile salts, they all من الإليم يمتصوا ويروحوا للليفر. في الليفر we process these fats and then we release the conjugated bile salts مرة أخرى so that new micelles will be formed. تصير زي السايكل رايحة جاية بين الإليم والليفر، إليم والليفر. Absorb, form and absorb and release conjugated bile salts. A role of bile salts. Bile salts help fat digestion. They emulsify fat. كلمة emulsify يعني تسويه مستحلب. الحليب عبارة عن موية ذايب فيها بروتين وفات. فات نخرج منه زبدة وسمن. However, we know that fat doesn't mix with water. However, because of the presence of certain salts, it becomes emulsified and creates an emulsion. يعني the emulsion is a liquid where fat is soluble in water, dissolved in water. It's an unusually or an unnatural way of binding fats with water. However, because of these salts, we can create such an emulsion. فمن اسمها مستحلب يعني زي الحليب, which is fat dissolved in water. The breakdown of fat globules into smaller particles thus increases surface area on which the lipase act. They break it down into smaller particles. كل particle عندها surface area أكثر صار. And it also activates the lipase. It's not only بس for digestion الفات bile salts, but also for absorption. They combine with lipids to form water-soluble complexes called the micelles, which form fats are easily absorbed. مرة أخرى زي ما قلت لكم الفات soluble vitamins أدك مجموعة في قولك أدك A و D و E و K vitamins absorbed along with fats. The role of bile salts مرة أخرى mile cell formation and fat emulsification, which takes a big globule of fat, creates small globules of fat that are dissolved in water. That's emulsification, and it's the action of creation an emulsion يعني مستحلب. Possible ways of absorption. يا إنه simply diffused through the membrane like lipids, or we need a carrier, like carrier-mediated transport, like amino acid, sugars, and lipids. Or we take it through endocytosis. Endocytosis is done like forming small vesicles and getting it into the cell. Vitamin B12 plus the intrinsic factor, this is its way of absorption. Where do we absorb nutrients? From the mouth, esophagus, and stomach. This is all by limited diffusion. Duodenum and jejunum is the major site of absorption. Ileum is vitamin B12 and bile salts. The colon, some sodium and water, short chain fatty acids. In the rectum, limited diffusion. So you can see carbohydrates, protein, and lipids. Carbohydrate, protein, and lipids, duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Major site is the duodenum. For the calcium, iron, and folate, duodenum takes a bigger part. Bile acids from the ileum, major part. Cobalamin from ileum. Why the small intestine is the major site of absorption? It is modified, subhanAllah. Expansion of absorptive surface by villi. The surface area of 300 square meters. Rich supply of blood vessels and lymph. The expression of specific transport proteins. So, the mechanism of absorption of water and sodium, normal daily water input. We take 1 to 2 liters of water plus 6 to 7 liters of GIT secretions. Small and large intestine approximately absorbs 80% of this fluid. The net movement of water across cell membrane always occurs by osmosis. محل ما يكون في مذيب عالي الوتر حتروح عشان تخففه. Absorption of water is absolutely dependent on absorption of solutes, particularly sodium. حين ما يروح الصوديوم المويه حتروح تتبعه. Sodium is absorbed at the luminal border by إيش؟ By simple diffusion through protein channels or as co-transport with amino acid or glucose, or at the basolateral border sodium-potassium pump. The lumen of small intestine, زي ما قلت لكم, it goes immediately مع الصوديوم. Glucose carrier mediated transport. عندنا الصوديوم هذا glucose transporters is sodium coupled transporter that mediates the uptake of glucose or galactose from the lumen of the small intestine into the enterocyte co-transport. GLUT5 glucose transporter يعني اختصار كلمة glucose transporter GLUT5 mediates the facilitated diffusion of fructose into the enterocyte. Once the monosaccharides are inside the enterocyte, GLUT2 mediates their efflux from the basolateral membrane into the intestinal space. Monosaccharides carrier mediate transport زي ما قلت لكم. الصوديوم carrier sodium glucose transporter and the GLUT5 عشان الفركتوز. Once it is inside the cell, GLUT2 takes it outside of it. Okay, some people cannot absorb galactose. These individuals have chronic diarrhea, where they ingest dietary sugars that are normally absorbed by SGLT1. This diarrhea results from both reduced small intestine sodium and fluid absorption, secondary to the osmotic effects of non-absorbed glucose and galactose. Patients with glucose galactose malabsorption do not have glucosuria because glucose reabsorption by proximal renal tubule normally occurs through the SGLT1 and GLUT2. يعني their deficiency of SGLT1 هذه موجودة في الأمعاء وفي الكدني، وبالتالي إذا هم عندهم هذه المشكلة في المال absorption في الأمعاء فغالبا حتى في الكدني even if they have high blood sugar they will not have glucosuria. Fructose, which crosses the apical membrane through GLUT5, does not include induced diarrhea. Amino acid absorption. The enterocyte directly absorbs some of the small oligopeptides through the action of the proton oligopeptide transporter. نسميها PEPT1. These small peptides are digested to amino acids to peptide by peptidases عفوا and the cytoplasm of the enterocyte. داخل الانتيروسايت تتحول إلى amino acids. Several sodium independent amino acid transporters move these amino acids out of the cell across the basolateral membrane. فزي ما قلت لكم تدخل peptidases وتتحول إلى amino acids داخل الخلية وتخرج من خلال some transporters. The malabsorption of amino acids عندنا several problems like the heart valve disease, pellagra like dermatosis, autosomal recessive metabolic disorder affecting the absorption of non-popular amino acids زي tryptophan. Tryptophan is very essential for a lot of neurotransmitters and others. Cystinuria, inherited autosomal recessive disease, formation of cystine stones in the kidneys and the bladder. And lysine uric protein intolerance. The cationic amino ألو الامينو اسيد يوريا. صوتي واضح ولا في تقطيع؟ الو واضح. طيب الكاتايونيك امينو اسيد يوريا or familial protein intolerance هذا autosomal برضه recessive metabolic disorder affecting lysine amino acid transport. Lysine is again a very important amino acid. Fats of the diet. Most common fat is a natural fat, neutral fats, that triglycerides. خلاص. glycerol, nucleus, and 3 fatty acids لاصقة فيها بالأسايل group, more in food of animal origin. And other types of fat, like phospholipids, cholesterol, and cholesterol esters, come from other sources. An abnormal fat digestion and absorption, pancreatic lipase deficiency, or bile salt deficiency, كلاهما قد يسبب steatorrhea. Steatorrhea is the excessive presence of fat in the feces. Feces float because fat floats over water. And excessive gas, oily, greasy appearance, foul smelling, fat soluble vitamin deficiency. ليش؟ لأن هذه الأدك vitamins depend on fat to be absorbed. That's it. Thank you very much for listening. وشاكر حسن استماعكم.
يعطيك العافية دكتور.